Okay, welcome back everybody to the second class in Excel. Just a reminder to log in, you simply go to lmetb.ie, click on staff email and you'll arrive into the Microsoft system. When you arrive in there, simply go up to the waffle or the menu system and select Excel. Last week we looked at some simple formulas and some simple additions around a home budget. I'm just going to have a quick revision of that before we move on to a more complex sheet. Okay, so again we've got columns going down and rows going across, and each box is called a cell. Microsoft Excel works on a grid reference system, so this is cell E5, this is cell G9, this is cell C17, so you read the column first and the row second. I will explain the relevance of that later on in the video. Okay, so if we jump straight into it. On the total per month, we want to add electricity, petrol and food. So the simplest way to do it, or the most basic way to do it, is to enter a formula. You simply press equals. When you press equals, all this becomes shaded out because equals means there's a formula coming. So it wakes Excel up that there's a formula coming, okay? Now, we do not enter 100 plus 140 plus 300. What we do is we enter the cell reference number. So if we click on this one, it's B2. So B2 goes in there. Plus C2 plus D2. Okay, press enter. Okay, so that has totaled up the amount there. Now the good thing about that is, if indeed in January we actually saved some money and we didn't spend 100, we spent 70. If I enter 70 there, the sum will recalculate for me. Whereas if I'd entered in the actual numbers, it wouldn't recalculate. So using the cell reference system means you can change the figures in here, but the totals will recalculate based on your new figures. Okay. So we've created that sum. Now, if we wanted to have that sum running in each of the cells going down, we don't have to type the formula in each time. We can actually use a thing called fill down. So what you do is you select the cell that has the formula in it. So the formula is in this cell. And highlight the adjacent cells going down or going right. So for this example, we're going to go the ones going down. And on your keyboard, you press Control and D. And what that does is it fills the sum down, but each time it fills it down, it increments it by 1. So this is calculating B2, C2, D2. This is calculating B3, C3, D3. This is B4, C4, D4. So again, as you're going down, it's incrementing it. So very quickly, we were able to calculate all of those values quite powerfully in Microsoft Excel. So now we have our totals per month. Let's say we wanted to do our totals per year. Now, if we were going to add up the amount that we spent in electricity over the 12 months of the year, we could do our sum, which would be equals this plus this and all the way down, but that's quite long-winded, okay? If you're going to be adding or a number of cells together, you will be much easier to go over and use the auto sum feature. So the auto sum feature, if you click on that, it'll try and grab the adjacent cells that have numbers in them to try and add them. So for this instance, that's exactly right. That's exactly the cells I want to add. So I just press enter. So again, just to revise how I did that, literally click into the cell, press auto sum. Okay, now if it's selected, say when I pressed auto sum, it looked like that. Okay, but really I wanted to have it all the way up to January. You can grab the handle, see the little square, and you can click and drag it to make sure it encompasses all the cells that you want. Okay, press them. Okay, that has now added up all of these. Okay, again here, if I want to do auto sum, simply press auto sum. Make sure that the amount of cells I want to be calculated are highlighted in blue. They are. Press enter, and that has calculated everything in there. Again, I can use my fill function as well. So here I have a formula in this cell. So I can click and drag that over to the cell to the right of it, press Control or, and the formula moves one space across. So here we have C2 to C14, here is D2 to D14. Again, then we also talked about using the regular font and formatting options. So if you want to make something bold, you simply select what you want bold and press bold. Or if I wanted to make them maybe a different color, simply select them and make them a different color. I might want to make my totals in red, so I'd select them and I might select red. Or I might decide that I actually want a different background, so I'll select them, and I might do shading to show maybe a light red background, so that that's just using the formatting that we did last week. Okay, so that's refreshed us back to where we were last week. And just a reminder to save the file, put a name up here, a meaningful name up here. You just click into the bar up here and put in a meaningful name. That's your workbook, and then your worksheets are down the bottom. This is dealing with expenses, so I've called this expenses. Okay, so this week we looked at a more complex, but just as easy, but a more complex, that makes sense, a more complex budget, but it's just as easy to do. Okay, so again, if we look at salary, right? So generally you will make the same amount every month. So let's say we're on COVID-19 payment, okay? So in-state benefits, we're going to get around 1,400 a month, okay? Now I could go across to each month and press 1,400, 1,400 all the way across. That would take time. I want this information to be filled all the way to the right. So again, highlight the first cell that you want the information to be filled across from, and then highlight the row going across. This time we're going across to the right, so it's not Control and D, it's Control and or for right, and that brings that information all the way across. Okay. Maybe we have a pension of €75 a month. I don't know. And again, that stays static throughout the year. So we'll grab the first cell and highlight all the way across, Control or going across. And I might put in maybe €500 here that I might get in a bonus in December, and maybe my birthday's in April, so maybe somebody will be nice and give me €50. Okay, so you can enter in information. You can either have the same information or you can enter in different information. Okay, so again, I want to calculate how much income I'm making in January. Okay, so I know I can use my auto sum feature. So I click on the cell where I want the answer to be, click on auto sum, and you see the way there it tries to grab these three cells. But really, maybe at some stage I might get income in January, so I want to make sure I include this extra cell in the sum. So I grab the handle and I pull it up so that if I enter something into salary, it will calculate in this sum. Okay, that's calculated how much I'm making for the month of January. Again, I have a formula and I want to use that across all the cells adjacent to it. So I highlight and move across and Control or, and that's after now calculating all the way across. And you see it's different there because it's taking into account the 500. It's different here because it's taking into account the 50. That's why it's important to make sure that all of those boxes are selected at the start. Okay, so that's at the moment, I'd say this is January and I'm sorting this out in January, and that's what I think I'm going to make per month. Okay, now we come down to expenditure. So maybe your mortgage or your rent is the same across. So again, put in 800, we want that to go all the way across, so we can go Control or. Okay, electricity is maybe €75 a month. I'm not going to put them all in, but you will be able to put them all in. Now you can put in the same figure or you can put in different figures. Maybe heating, you're going to spend 100 in January, maybe you'll spend 70 in February, maybe you'll spend 80 in March. You can enter in different figures as you go across. You get the idea. Okay. Okay, maybe you don't use it in September. Okay, so you can fill in your own information. The situation is the same again here. So I want to add up all these because I want to add up how much I spent in the month. So auto sum. How much I'm spending in that month. Okay. So again, click and drag and Control or will bring that same sum all the way down. Okay. Again, if it happens that I spend 100 quid in electricity in January, if I replace the 75 with 100, you'll see that down in cell B22, it's going to change the amounts because this sum is dynamic. It's changing according to whatever we're putting in the cells. Okay. Okay, so now we know how much we make in January and how much we spend in January. How do we figure out what's left over at the end? Well, we're going to do a formula. So again, equals. We're going to take our income, what we make. We're going to minus what we spend. That's what we've got left over. And again, we click and drag across. Right. And there you are. Now we know what we have left over at the end of each month. Now, the power of Excel means that if you say you come off state benefits, so COVID-19 ends, okay, so we take that away. We say if we delete that information there. Okay, now you can see we're actually in minus figures, so we're obviously making less than we're spending, but we get a job. Okay, so now we're going to make 2,000 a month. Okay, fill that across. So you can see as you change the figures, these figures change. As you change the numbers, these figures change. And that's the power of Excel. It means that you can budget on the run. You set it up at the start of the year, and at the end of every month you go in and you fill in what you've spent and what you've made, and you know roughly how much is left. So it allows you to budget for the rest of this year, and then the power is if you do it this year, next year you'll be able to see if you need to save money somewhere. So you may go, well, look, I'm spending too much on electricity. If I brought electricity down to 60 euros a month, how much would that give me extra? Bring to 60. Oh, look, now I've got 1,115 to spare, whereas before I only had 1,100. Okay, so that's the power of Excel. Again, if I want to name this sheet, I simply come down, double click on the sheet, and I might call this the personal annual or the annual budget. Again, when you're creating your own, I want you to try to use some color and some bold to make things stand out. It makes it much easier to read if you've got color shading, so this is shading, on the rows or the columns that have totals in them. Okay, that's the important one, is to have the shading on the rows that contain the sums, because it makes it easier to stand out. Okay, so what I want you to do for next week is I want you to just go into Excel, open up Excel and open up a blank worksheet or blank workbook, okay? And I want you to try and type out your annual budget as with the stuff that you would actually, the income that you get and the expenditure that you get. You can make up the figures. Please don't put down anything too personal in it. Just make up the figures. And if you get stuck, send me an email. Otherwise, I will see you next Friday and we can discuss then any issues that you've had. Okay, thank you.